Hey everyone, welcome to my new podcast, So You Want Me to Believe. This is a weekly podcast that discusses true crime, the paranormal, weird history, and conspiracy theories. This is the very first episode of the podcast, and I'm very excited to begin producing regular content for you guys. I don't want this to be another one of those podcasts that just kind of talks about murders and all the facts surrounding the investigations. Now, obviously, I will lay out the facts that are known for you in all of these cases I discuss, but I generally won't be talking about cases that we already have the answers to. And like I said, I'm not only interested in true crime, I also want to talk about cases of unexplained paranormal events, weird historical facts with questions surrounding them, and crazy conspiracy theories that are probably not true but are fascinating to think about nonetheless. What I want out of this podcast is to deliver the known information to you to the best of my ability, and then to wildly speculate about what really happened in each case. Before we get started, I want to talk a little bit about some of the things I've been working on to help support the show. The first thing I want to tell you about is my Patreon page. If you don't already know, Patreon is an online membership platform that provides business tools for creators to run a subscription content service. It allows subscribers or patrons to help creators to continue producing content while offering exclusive rewards and perks for their support. The link to my Patreon page is www.patreon.com/SYWMTBpod. I currently have 3 tiers available with stacking incentives, and I'm very proud of these. For $5 a month, you can be a part of what I'm calling the Skeptics tier. This tier gets you early access to episodes every week. So episodes will normally be released to the general public on Sundays at 5 p.m. Central Standard Time, but skeptics get early access to these episodes on Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. For $10 a month, you can be part of the True Believers tier. In addition to early access to the episodes, this tier gets you access to bonus episodes not available to the public. And finally, for $20 a month, you can be a part of the Tinfoil Hat Club. This tier gets you access to everything in the previous tiers, as well as a monthly AMA with me to answer any and all questions you may have for me. As a side note, I am absolutely not committed to these incentives. These are the incentives as they stand currently, but I'm open to suggestions. So if you're interested in subscribing to the Patreon page and have an idea for something you'd like to see as an incentive, please send me an email with your suggestion. My email address is sywmtbpod@gmail.com. And if you do like the show, please consider joining the Patreon. Your support is greatly appreciated, and everyone who subscribes helps me to produce the show. I also want to plug Buzzsprout. I don't have enough of a listener base to get any actual sponsors because currently I have no listener base. So to be clear, Buzzsprout is not sponsoring this show, but they are a great service that offers content creators affiliate partnerships, so I do want you to know about them. Buzzsprout is a podcast hosting service that allows creators to put the content they make out into the world. If you've ever been interested in starting your own podcast like I'm doing now, Buzzsprout is an excellent resource to help you achieve that goal. Following the link in the show notes lets Buzzsprout know I sent you, gets you a $20 Amazon gift card if you sign up for a paid plan, and helps support the show. I use Buzzsprout, and it's really helped make putting out my podcast an easy task. Buzzsprout offers a lot of useful and convenient features, like tons of guides to help you find the right equipment at the right price, getting your show listed in every major podcast platform, and by providing a great-looking podcast website that includes audio players that you can drop into other websites, detailed analytics to see how people are listening, tools to promote your episodes, and more. Podcasting isn't hard when you have the right partners. The team at Buzzsprout is passionate about helping you succeed. So join over 100,000 podcasters already using Buzzsprout to get their message out to the world. And with all of that out of the way, let's go ahead and jump into the topic for this week's episode. The topic I've chosen for tonight's episode is the mysterious disappearance of Bryce Laspisa. At the time of his disappearance, 19-year-old Bryce Laspisa was a sophomore at Sierra College in Rocklin, California, where he was studying industrial and graphic design. I watched the Investigation Discovery episode on Bryce as a part of my research on this case, and they showed some of his artwork, and he was producing some really nice art when he was in school. I was involved in music when I was in college, and we shared a building with the art department, so I've seen a lot of art done by college students, which can sometimes not be so great. And from the few images I saw, I would have to say that Bryce appears to have been an incredibly talented artist. Bryce and his family were originally from Naperville, Illinois, but moved out to California in 2012 after Bryce graduated from high school. After moving to California, his parents lived in the town of Laguna Niguel, which looks like it's about 8 hours southeast of Rocklin according to Google Maps. Bryce lived with his parents when he was on breaks from school and had spent the entire summer of 2013 in their home before returning to school for the fall semester. He had only been back on the school's campus for about 2 weeks and had only attended a handful of classes when, on August 31st, 2013, Bryce Laspisa disappeared without a trace. Now, according to his friends and family, Bryce was a very social guy and was really easy to talk to. His mom described him as essentially being an open book. Bryce had lots of friends and was dating a girl named Kim, who he met in his freshman year. I haven't seen any interviews that came from Kim directly, so I don't know if their relationship was truly in a healthy place or not, but his mom says that they appeared to be happy in the post she saw of them online. She also said they raised him to treat women right, so she knew he was being a gentleman. I have no reason to believe that this is not true, and I'm sure Bryce was a great guy, but we have a little bit of a reason not to fully trust a lot of what his mom has said, and I'll discuss why that is in a bit. This just seems to me to be one of those instances where she spoke on something she really didn't know much about, but I could be totally wrong on that one too. Anyway, 3 days before Bryce's disappearance, his friends say they saw a noticeable change in his personality. His roommate Sean said he was starting to give some of his stuff away. He had also reportedly been drinking heavily, or I guess just more than usual, because he was a college student, and college kids drink. But he was also using a drug called Vyvanse, which is an ADHD medication. Now, I've been to college. I know a lot of people who have used Vyvanse to pull all-nighters to write papers or study or what have you. It doesn't get you high, it just makes you not tired. And that's what his friends claim Bryce was using the drug for, so he could stay up all night and play video games. So Bryce went missing on August 31st, which was a Saturday. It was the Tuesday prior to that things started to seem off with Bryce. Sean said Tuesday was the night that Bryce decided to take the Vyvanse so he could play his games, but also says he had been drinking heavily for some time prior to that. Both Sean and Kim have confirmed that this was the case. Then, on Wednesday, the next morning, Bryce sends Kim a text message breaking up with her, telling her that she might be better off without him. Later that night, Bryce goes to Kim's house, apparently to talk about the relationship, but I can't confirm that. But Bryce reaffirms that he wants to end things with Kim. At this point, Kim takes away his car keys. She claims that he seemed unwell, which I understand meant that he was under the influence of something. This made Bryce really angry, so he called his mom to intervene in the situation. His mom offered to fly out to him to help him out, but Bryce tells her not to do that or make any travel arrangements, but he also tells her that there's a lot he needs to talk to both of his parents about. What that was, we don't know, but it's very likely that this has something to do with his disappearance. Bryce's mom agrees not to come out there and tells Kim to give him his keys back. She thought Bryce sounded lucid, and Bryce told her he was fine, so she thought it would be okay for him to drive back to his apartment. And she tells him to do just that, go back to your apartment and get some sleep. Several hours later, Bryce calls his mom at 1 o'clock in the morning on Thursday. The last time she spoke with him, she was under the impression that he was going back to his apartment, so she assumed that's where he was, and said he sounded normal on the phone call. After the fact, though, they would find out that when he made that call, he was actually about an hour away from his apartment, headed south. So his mom doesn't think anything of the phone call and goes about her business. Then at 11 o'clock Thursday morning, Bryce's parents receive a notice from State Farm alerting them that roadside assistance was requested for Bryce's vehicle. They didn't really know what to think of this because as far as they knew, he was still at school. I assume they tried to reach Bryce at this point and couldn't, but I don't recall anything that said whether they did or did not try to call him. I do know that his mom called his roommate Sean, who tells her that Bryce never came home the night before. Obviously, they're starting to get concerned about this, and they decide to look into his credit card charges to see if they could find anything that would tell them where he is. What they found was a charge from a place called Castro Tire and Gas in Buttonwillow, California. Buttonwillow is a small town off of the freeway, and it's in the direction of his parents' house, so they just assumed he was on his way to their house. Remember, he had told his mom that he needed to talk to them, so it was a pretty reasonable assumption. After finding the charge, his parents decided to call Castro Tire and Gas, and they reached a man named Christian who says he had serviced Bryce's car about 90 minutes prior to the phone call at the Buttonwillow rest stop. Christian offered to go back and check to see if he was still there, assuming he would be long gone at that point. But when Christian gets back to the rest stop, he's surprised to see that Bryce is still sitting there in that same spot. So Christian calls Bryce's parents back, tells them he's still there, and has Bryce talk to his mom. His mom says he asked him what he was doing, and he wouldn't give her an answer, so she just told him to get some gas and come on home. He was about 3 hours away from their home in Laguna Niguel, so they expected him to be home sometime around 3 p.m. Bryce did end up getting gas using that credit card, but 3 p.m. came and went, and Bryce never showed up at home. His mom tried to call him several times over the course of several hours, but Bryce never answered his phone. At this point, the parents decide to file a missing persons report. After doing so, the police are able to get an order to ping Bryce's cell phone to find out where he was. The police are able to track his location successfully, however, it looks like he was still in Buttonwillow, having only traveled about 8 miles since they talked to him last. The police send someone out to check on him, and when they find him, they say he seems to be acting perfectly normal. Just to be safe, though, they do give him a sobriety test and ask for permission to search his car, both of which he agrees to, but they don't find anything out of the ordinary. The only thing Bryce was doing that the police described as odd was refusing to call and talk to his parents. The officer had to actually dial his phone and place it in his hand for him to speak with his mom. Again, his mom asks him what he was doing, and again, Bryce just says nothing. The police, having done their due diligence in this situation, deem Bryce okay to drive and tell him to go on his way, and they leave. While all of this is going on, Christian, the man who serviced his car, calls his mom, telling her he had a missed call from her number and was returning that call. I don't think he even really knew he was calling Bryce's mom. He was just returning her call that he had missed. She tells him that Bryce is still in Buttonwillow, and Christian offers to go back and check on him. At this point, Bryce had been on the road for 22 hours. So Christian goes to check on him, and he is exactly where the police found him. He convinces Bryce to start driving and to get on the freeway, then follows him for about 10 miles to make sure that he was actually going. Christian then called Bryce's mom to let her know and exits the freeway. So now his parents believe that Bryce is on his way to their house. They call Bryce several times and ask him to describe landmarks around him that would tell them where he is. But Bryce refuses to cooperate. He keeps telling them it's too dark and he can't see anything. Once again, the parents just assume that Bryce is driving towards them. Then at 2:09 a.m. on Friday, Bryce calls his mom to tell her that he's tired and that he's going to pull over and go to sleep. She just kind of says, okay, and just leaves it at that. Now, I get it, she thinks he's doing the responsible thing and pulling over to rest, but with the behavior he's been exhibiting over the last couple of days, why didn't they just hop in the car and go get him? They knew where he was for at least 22 hours. Couldn't they have just gone and picked him up? I don't know, maybe there's a reason why they decided not to do that, but it seems to me that that would have been the first thing most people would want to do. A few hours later at 8 a.m., the doorbell rings at the Laspisa's house. They thought that it must be Bryce getting home, although I don't know why he would be ringing the doorbell at his own house, but that's besides the point. When they answered the door, a California highway patrolman was standing there. He told them that they had found Bryce's 2003 Toyota Highlander abandoned off an access road to Castaic Lake, overturned down the embankment, but Bryce was not with the car. He had left all of his valuables with the car, and the back window had appeared to be kicked out. They think that's how he got out after the accident. They did find a little bit of Bryce's blood on the headrest and in the back seat, but very little. This led them to believe that he is most likely unharmed, but obviously couldn't rule out the possibility of any internal injury of some kind. Police also said, based on the tracks his car left behind, he was speeding down the embankment on purpose. They said it did not appear that the tracks were consistent with someone who had lost control of brakes or someone having fallen asleep at the wheel or something like that, but that he was actually accelerating down the embankment. But why would he do that? Was he suicidal? One theory is that maybe he thought he was driving directly into the lake, as it looked closer than it actually was from the access road. Another theory is that maybe he had some sort of psychotic break brought on by the drugs and alcohol. However, his parents reject that theory. They didn't seem to think his drug and alcohol use was any more or less extreme than any other college student, and they refused to believe the idea that had anything to do with his disappearance. Having found his car and assuming he was suicidal, police thought maybe Bryce could be at the bottom of the lake. So they conduct an extensive search of the lake and the surrounding area, but their search yielded no results. They brought out cadaver dogs, they had divers search the lake, they had search parties combing through the brushes. There was still no sign of Bryce. Now, 5 days later, there was a brush fire reported in the area, and after investigating it, it turns out that this was actually a body being burned. Since it was so close to the area that Bryce's car was found, they thought there was a good chance that it might be Bryce. But it turns out it wasn't Bryce. After doing some forensic testing, they determined it was the body of a man from LA who was the victim of an unrelated homicide. So now that we're back at square one, except for one thing. Police were able to get surveillance footage from a camera on the access road to Castaic Lake. The cameras captured Bryce's car twice. The first time was at 2:15 a.m., only 6 minutes after talking to his mom about pulling over to sleep. The camera caught his car again 2 hours later, going in the same direction as if he had just kind of circled around. But this information didn't give them a whole lot to go on because they already knew where the car was. It was Bryce that was missing. So then 9 days later, the police had bloodhounds come out to the lake to try and trace Bryce's scent. And they were able to trace his scent from the scene of the accident all the way around the lake and over to a local truck stop, where they eventually lost his scent. So, those are the known facts about the case, but we still don't know what happened to Bryce or why he was behaving the way he was behaving. There are several theories circulating about what could have happened to him. Police believe he likely just walked away from his life to start a new one. But his parents refused to believe he would do that, saying their relationship with him was too strong and that he wouldn't just walk away from them. However, there are several posts online from people claiming to be close with or personally know the family that say the relationship between Bryce and his parents was not as good as his parents want the public to believe. These sources claim that his parents were very controlling and that he had a, quote, codependent relationship with his mother. Now, to me, that phrasing only serves to reinforce the parents' belief that he wouldn't leave them, but it's also possible that the person who said that just didn't use the best choice of wording. But because of this, a lot of people believe he wanted to tell his parents off, but chickened out at the last minute. The belief is that he attempted suicide and failed, but then decided he didn't actually want to die, and ultimately made the decision to just disappear and start over somewhere else. There are other people who went to high school with Bryce who say that he was quite the stoner back in Naperville. These acquaintances say his drug use was much heavier than his parents led the public to believe. Of course, it's possible that his parents didn't truly know about the extent of Bryce's drug use. So there's that theory that Bryce's drug use caused some kind of psychotic break, which would explain his odd behavior, but the theory that he walked away from his life seems to be the most common belief. Some people believe that since, at the time, marijuana was legal in only a few states, he may have hitchhiked to Oregon, where there was legal weed, and started a new life there. This theory was brought on by several reported sightings of Bryce around the Eugene-Portland area, but every one of those reports has turned out to be a false lead. Along with the drug use theory, it's also theorized that maybe he was actually meeting someone for something drug-related, maybe someone dangerous or a group of people. There's a lot of speculation on why he would be meeting someone, but if it was drug-related, maybe he felt he was in danger and had to disappear. And with that being the belief, maybe he crashed his car in an attempt to fake his death and hitchhiked somewhere to hide. Another thought is that maybe he was scared of these people, so he actually did attempt suicide in order to save himself from whatever fate was in store for him when the person or people reached him. Or could he have actually been murdered by these people who then hid his body? I don't know that I think these are very likely, but they are theories that people have circulated online. Now, this one is a little odd, but I did find a website in which an online astrologist stated that Bryce is, in fact, dead. Of course, there was no explanation as to what happened or how they know he's dead, but that's what they reported was in his chart. So make of that what you will. Obviously, no one has the right answer. Someone may know something, but as of now, there is no information that would tell us what did become of Bryce. Personally, I believe the theory that makes the most sense is that Bryce wanted to escape his parents' grasp, attempted suicide in a desperate act when he didn't know what else to do, then decided to hitchhike somewhere to start a new life. But that's just what I think, though. I'm not an expert on this case, and I have nowhere near enough information to make an educated guess about this. With the information I do have available, though, that's what I think happened. It has now been over 6 years since Bryce has gone missing, so if you do happen to have any information about the disappearance of Bryce Laspisa, please contact one of the following. The Orange County Sheriff's Office, their phone number is 714-647-7040. The LA County Sheriff's Office, their phone number is 323-890-5500, or send an email to findbrycelaspisa@gmail.com. Alright, so that's all I have for you for this episode. If you have any theories regarding this case that you'd like to share with me, please send me an email at sywmtbpod@gmail.com. Eventually, I would like to start producing listener episodes in which I can discuss the theories you all have provided to me. But also, if you have any episode ideas, please feel free to email those to me as well. I'm always looking for new topics to research and discuss. If you like this episode, please remember to subscribe to the show in whatever platform you choose to listen to it in. And if you don't mind taking the time, please give me a review of the show. Good reviews help others find the show, and honestly, they just kind of make me feel good. If you didn't like this episode, thank you for still listening, and I support your right to your incorrect opinion. As far as social media for updates on the podcast, you can also like my page on Facebook, So You Want Me to Believe Podcast. And you can also find me on Twitter and Instagram at SYWMTBpod on both platforms. And finally, don't forget to tell your friends about the show. I'm really excited to be working on this project. It's something I've wanted to do for some time. So spread the word, and I really appreciate your support. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you all next week.